Building relationships and building Waterloo Region. 570 News proudly presents Business to Business. Here's your host, Glenn Pelletier.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Business on 570 News, powered by Allstream. Joined as I am, gentlemen, what are you guys laughing about?
Oh, he's got the webcast on the TV again. It's always
he loves looking at himself.
He does.
Basically,
no one else does, but
Greg,
he does.
are you the kind of guy that when you're walking downtown and you're walking in and you're in front of a reflective
and I look
surface,
in front of the
do you check yourself out all
in
the
the
time?
window?
Yeah,
no,
I
don't
do
that. But
I've been doing that my whole life.
I
just
like
to see
the
if
way
I'm still looking good.
I really
and
like.
you know what? I always am.
Of course, you're looking good.
Thank
Except
you.
when you've got your cold, but you look a little rough around the edges right now. But
Don't say that. Do I really?
yeah, you do.
Thanks, Greg.
Doesn't he look a little rough?
He does look a little rough.
Are you kidding? Come on, don't
No.
say that, man.
Yeah, the
you know how I
bags
take
under
things
the eyes
personally.
and-
You know, I do have a bit of a cold, and I haven't had a cold in 5 years. But you know who I blame for that?
Yeah.
Not my fault.
I wouldn't say it on air, though, buddy.
Ian McLean, president of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce, and Greg DeRocher, president of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. And gentlemen, we have a lot to get to this morning. We're going to talk about BlackBerry, and they got some great press out of the Consumer Electronics Show.
Las Vegas, yeah.
And they weren't expecting this. It was just, the show really didn't have, it wasn't there to promote research in motion, but as an offshoot, a couple of great things came out of that, out of that show, Greg.
I think what we're because really the electronics issues that were kind of hot down there. They were talking about all of these health things. You know, the fork that is designed to regulate how fast you eat. And so they were getting into a lot of that. Also, TVs were big, too. They were
Ultra
talking about
HD.
Ultra HD.
Four times the resolution of regular HD.
Yeah,
I can't even comprehend
But they
that.
only come in big screens, like big screens, 80-inch. Like, where are you going to use it? And they're $20,000. But what was very good was that BlackBerry 10 got incredible reviews. And we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah, you were mentioning that there was a guy that compared it to the iPhone, and with glowing results for research in motion.
All over the U.S. coverage is equally as important to this.
Wait a minute. When I say compared it to the iPhone, I'm saying
positively.
Yeah. Well, he contrasted it superiorly with the iPhone, as opposed to saying
Absolutely.
it's like the iPhone,
Yeah.
right, Greg?
And was a dedicated iPhone. Actually, had wrote some articles in slamming BlackBerry, but now has looked at the new BlackBerry 10 and said.
And Thurston Hines was also just honored as the tech CEO of the year by the tech community itself across North America, I think. So
we should have done the show from down there.
Yeah,
that would.
Well, you know what? Let's ask our bosses maybe
next
year.
Send us to
We're
Vegas.
going on a road trip to Vegas to do a 1 hour show.
And you know what?
Vegas.
You know what they say. What happens at the Consumer Electronics Show stays at the Consumer Electronics Show.
No, it actually stays on YouTube and Facebook now.
Yeah, that's right.
Nothing. You know what? Nothing stays anywhere anymore.
See,
once you
got the thumbs up.
Once you can acknowledge that, once you basically have accepted the new reality, there is no such thing as any containment of anything anymore. Then you can get on with your life.
Yeah,
and young people know this better than us guys.
Well,
because they've grown up with this.
Well, that's actually one of the reasons that Baby 10 I think is marrying the business and your personal your personal life together, and I think that's one of the things that is really getting a lot of traction.
I'm actually on our next live show. I'm going to be calling in from Vegas because I'll be down there.
Are you really? Nice.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to think. Something else came out of the Consumer Electronics Show. It was a guy with, I believe it was the Financial Post, some leading business publication. And what did he say this week? He said something about research in motion. I know what it was. I forget his name. We talked about it last week. He, again, compared it to the iPhone and said he's very, very, very impressed with the capability of BlackBerry 10, and he's expecting very, very good things from research in motion in the first quarter. The first fiscal quarter.
Yeah, this is going to be a home run for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, and joining us now, we have our first guest, and we're delighted to have with us. The timing couldn't be better. I want to thank Ian for putting the feeler out to this one with his political connections. We're delighted to be joined by Yasser Naqvi. He's an up-and-comer with the Ontario Liberal Party. He's the MPP for Ottawa Centre. He's also the president of the Ontario Liberal Party. And gentlemen, take it away. And we're talking to Yasser for a reason, right? I mean, yes, the leadership convention is coming up the weekend of the 25th.
This is an important weekend for them as well.
This, from a business perspective, this is where you guys are coming in, where we're coming at it from.
Well, yeah, and thanks for joining us, Mr. Nakvi. I mean, we to the business community, it's obviously important. The Liberal Party of Ontario is electing the next premier of the province of Ontario. So we thank you for joining us today. And I guess maybe just to give overview to the listeners, can you tell us a little bit about the process itself? You've got a delegated convention process. I think you had delegate selection meetings this weekend. So just tell us a little bit about how the process is going to work in terms of your convention at the end of January.
Well, first of all, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it and enjoy the conversation on the top of the show there as well. This is a very important process for the Ontario Liberal Party and also for the province of Ontario. As you know, the Premier announced his retirement back in middle of October, and since then the party has been working very hard to organize a convention which will take place during the weekend of January the 25th, so only 2 weeks away from now, where the delegates are going to elect our next leader and, of course, the Premier for the province as well. Leading up to the convention, we have a couple of things that we've been doing. One, of course, the candidates have been quite busy traveling the province and signing up new members. We saw in that process our membership almost doubling. We have about 45,000 members across the province now, which is very exciting. People who are keen to take part in the selection process. Then came what I call the persuasion phase, where the candidates were involved in debates. So we hosted 5 debates across the province, which I'm sure some of you may have seen through the webcast and may have heard about it. Those were very exciting debates talking about ideas, where to take Ontario next, how to grow the economy, how to create new innovative jobs in Ontario. This weekend is the selection of delegates. We had meetings yesterday in Eastern Ontario, Northern Ontario, and Central Ontario, and today in Toronto, Southwest, and South Central. The delegates will be elected through this weekend, will attend the convention, as I mentioned earlier, during the weekend of January 25th and 26th, and they will be casting the ballot. And we will continue that process until one person receives 50% plus one.
So I just want to point out for those listening who might not know how the process works. In general, what's happening is party members are spending this weekend picking the people who will
delegates,
who will be eligible to vote for their new leader. And right now, I mean, this Kathleen Wynne and Sandra Pupatello are said to be battling for the lead in those crucial delegate selection meetings. Whether that means anything heading into convention weekend or not, I mean, things can change rather quickly. Maybe
that's a clarification, Mr. Nakvi. What does that really mean? Because the reports coming out now are saying, Sandra Pupatello was ahead of Kathleen Wynne, but what does that really mean?
Well, I mean, delegates are the one who vote on the floor. So even the process that's taking place this weekend has 2 parts to it. One is that members who are coming in to vote, they vote for an individual who they like to see as a leader, and then they vote for individuals, local members of our community who want to attend the convention as a delegate. The number of delegates that are being sent through this process is on a proportional basis. So let's say, as you can see from the numbers yesterday, Sandra Pupatello received roughly about 28% of the votes, so she's received so far 28% of the delegates. Kathleen Wynne, I believe, has 26% of the votes, so she has 26% of the delegates. So it is representative of what people are thinking. Then these delegates obviously are going to be casting their ballot at on the floor of the convention, and as I mentioned earlier, we will continue with that process during the weekend until one candidate receives 50% plus one of the votes.
Now, is that the delegates are bound to support the candidate on the first ballot? Then after that, are they free to, because the delegated convention's got its own dynamic. When someone drops out, if they're at the bottom of the list. So are the delegates required to only vote for the candidate they're selected to on the first ballot, or does it follow right through as long as they're on the ballot?
Only at the first ballot that you are required to vote for the person you are elected, but beyond that you are free.
So it's a very fluid process then inside the convention.
It is indeed, and that's what makes it so dynamic and exciting as well. There's another layer as well, and that's we have roughly 400 plus ex-official members. These are individuals who are members of provincial parliaments, for example, like myself, party executive, former members of liberal members of provincial parliament. These people don't have to run as delegates. They are automatically entitled to attend the convention. A lot of these individuals may have not declared as to who they're supporting, and so they will be making their choice as well. So
all right, Yasser, hold it right there, my friend. We're going to come back and continue the conversation with Yasser Naqvi, President of the Ontario Liberal Party and MPP for Ottawa Centre. You're listening to Business, powered by Allstream on 570 News.
Business to Business, powered by Allstream, a presentation of 570 News. Watch the live video webcast at 570news.com. We'll return with more Business to Business. What you know. It's who you know. Connecting community through business. This is Business to Business on 570 News. Powered by Allstream. All local, all relevant. Allstream.com. Here's your host, Glenn Pelletier.
And welcome back to Business, powered by Allstream. We are being webcast, as always, at 570news.com. How are we looking, Greg? Are we looking good?
We're looking good. Yeah, we are.
Thanks to Catherine Drake for producing the webcast, and to Liz Russell, our producer, for the radio portion of the show. Without these two individuals, who are professionals, very, very professional, by the way, especially, I won't say especially Liz, but Liz knows how to crack the whip. If we go a little too long, she keeps us in line. So thank you, Liz.
Thank God somebody does.
I appreciate that. We are in conversation with Yasser Naqvi. He is the president of the Ontario Liberal Party and also the MPP for Ottawa Centre. And so explain this to me again, guys. They're selecting the delegates who will vote on the weekend of the 25th at the convention to select the new Ontario Liberal Party leader.
Yeah,
and
this weekend is delegate selection meetings, and so the members are voting on a weighted basis per riding, and then they're selecting the delegates that'll go, and on the first ballot, you'll know more. I think you'll know.
Now, the delegates haven't tipped their hat, but we do, or have they?
Because we do know that the delegates that are elected will have. But I think what Mr. Naqvi said is the ex officio delegates don't necessarily have to. That's where a little bit of the surprise will be on the first ballot.
Now,
is where
we've been saying that, quote, Pupatello right now is ahead of Kathleen Wynne. Are we talking about delegate support? Is that
Correct,
what we're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Now, Mr. Naqvi, you've chosen to go that delegate process at the convention. And I'm just wondering, maybe from a personal perspective, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but the fact is, Mr. Sabera has suggested that the one member, one vote system would have been more empowering for the Liberal minority government at the outcome of the selection of the new leader. How do you feel about that as the president of the Ontario Liberal Association?
Yeah, I mean, in this instance, our hands were tied because that's the process that's outlined in our party constitution. So, in order for us to do anything different, the constitution has to be amended, which would take place at an annual general meeting. So that's something obviously we need to consider for the future, and we have been looking at ways in how we can make our membership more open, make the whole process more attractive. We just, I guess, did not have enough time to put some of those thoughts into real constitutional amendments before we got into this process. But I think that's something, there will be lessons learned from this process that I'm sure we will consider moving forward and seeing how we continue to make the process more democratic, more transparent, and more exciting.
Okay, a couple of quick questions while we have it. So after today, where you said I think the Southwest, Toronto, and South Central are electing their delegates. So what would the status of the race be? I mean, you will know, generally speaking, how at least the first ballot lies. Just kind of walk us through what we'll see at the end of today, and then once the convention comes on at the end of January, how many ballots it might take to select the new leader.
Well, by the end of today or by early tomorrow morning, we should have a final tally of number of delegates for each candidate going into the weekend of January 25th. Of course, then the real effort is on the part of all the campaigns to make sure that their delegates do attend the convention. Just because you have chosen delegate doesn't mean that your vote is automatic. You have to register.
Be there.
And be there and cast that ballot physically in order for it to be counted. And then we'll start the process. And the way it will work essentially is, like I said, on Saturday, the 26th, we'll continue to vote until one person has 50% plus one. On every ballot, the person with the least amount of vote will be dropped from the ballot. Of course, their delegates then are free to vote in whatever manner they choose to vote, and we'll continue to play that on.
We are in conversation with Yasser Naqvi, president of the Ontario Liberal Party. He is the MPP for Ottawa Centre.
Now, there have been a lot of issues, obviously, with whether it's Orange and proroguing the legislature, the teachers issue, obviously, which is still front and center for many, not only parents, but for businesses and people in working. But the new premier has got to hit the reset button, and one, I mean, I guess I'm looking. What would your expectation be when the new premier, whoever it happens to be, is elected? I mean, presumably we'll have a throne speech and maybe a budget if you can get to that point, and laying out what the new premier's priorities would be. But if that's true, do you expect that can move forward, or are we going to be into an election this spring? Because those are issues business wants to know. I mean, certainty is important for them. So a throne speech, budget, and election. How do those things all fit together?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think what we need right now is more certainty, especially in a recovering economy that we've got. And Ontario is doing quite well in terms of jobs recovery and the growth in our GDP. But we need to make sure that we have that stability reflected in the government as well. My real hope is that once we have a new premier elected, that we get down to the business of people. We get a speech from the throne and a budget passed, and fulfill the mandate that the people have given to the Liberal government. So that work needs to be done, but it is a minority parliament, which means that all three parties need to work together, which means both give and get from all three sides, and I'm hopeful. The optimism in me says that with the new leader, I think we've got a great opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Yasser. Yasser Naqvi. He is the president of the Ontario Liberal Party, MPP for Ottawa Centre. Thanks for your time today.
My absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Ian, you were saying that Yasser is an up-and-comer in the party. This guy's he's catching people's attention. A number of accolades have come his way. In a column in September of 2011, the Globe and Mail called him, quote, possibly the hardest working constituency MPP in the province. He was named by Ottawa Citizen one of the people to watch for 2010, and so on. Were you aware of him prior to?
Yeah, I mean, just watching things like Studio 2 and some of the shows in and around Queen's Park and who.
So do you agree with that assessment? That
I do. Look, you don't get to be the president of one of the major parties in Ontario without being very politically astute and very bright. It's as simple as that. I mean, whether you're the president of the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, or the Democrats, those are big organizations, and you have to have a lot of talent to do that. So he's you get yourself elected to the legislature in Ottawa Centre. It can be a swing riding between the NDP and the Liberals. So he's and he's very articulate. He did well on the radio today, but he's very telegenic. He's done well on TV interviews too. So
and from your perspective, he has a background in international trade law. He worked for the Center for Trade Policy and Law. So somebody definitely to keep an eye out for.
And business oriented too, which is a bonus for us.
It's going to be an interesting process. I think from business perspective, and maybe Ian and I are, we've got the handicap favoring us because we follow it a lot closer than most people. But they've got some candidates, Kathleen Wynne and Gerard Kennedy and Glenn Murray until he backed out and threw his support behind Wynne, but. They're clearly on the left side of the liberal agenda, And you've got Pupatello, who's clearly on the right side of that agenda. And I think it's going to be interesting from business, because our concern is going to be, regardless of whether it's a minority government or majority government, whether there's an election or not, we want to know what the leadership is going to be and how is
until we have an election or we're going to have a throne speech and a budget. I mean, and I guess my guess is, notwithstanding what Mr. Nackby said, is will be those that will say the mandate that was given a year ago was to Mr. McGuinty as premier. It wasn't given to whoever the new premier was, and there's a lot of question around should we be into another election. I guess that's why I was asking the question. I think what you'll find is a new premier, as they have to do, will appoint a new cabinet.
Yeah. Well,
I think they'll lay out an agenda in what will be, I think, a very extensive throne speech, because I don't think they're going to get to a budget. I think the Conservatives and the NDP will say, look, great that you've got a new premier, but I think it's time for the people to decide who they want running things, and so I think we will be into an election, which is fine. We'll be running all candidate sessions locally, and we'll be asking questions of the leaders and saying, how are the policies that you're going to put forward going to affect business both here regionally in Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, and the townships, as well as across the province.
We will know in 2 weeks who the new premier is, because that leader of the Liberal Party effectively becomes premier as soon as they are chosen. You are listening to Business to Business, powered by Allstream on 570 News.
We'll be right back with more Business to Business, powered by Allstream. Call in with your questions at star 570, 570-2545, or 1-800-570-5715. It's not just what you know, it's who you know. Connecting community through business. This is Business to Business on 570 News. Powered by Allstream. All local, all relevant. Allstream.com. Here's your host, Glenn Pelletier.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News, powered by Allstream, and we are delighted to have a first-time guest. We've had Allstream on several times. They're our big sponsor. We thank them for that. But this is the first time we've had a chance to chat with Mike Lapalme. He is the Director of Solutions Partner Marketing for Allstream. And Greg, kick it off.
Mike, welcome to the show. Thanks very much for taking the time today.
Greg, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Listen, Mike, tell us about what we can see and expect for 2013, and what are the key themes for Allstream for 2013?
Well, you know what? In a word, you can expect focus, and I would suggest, what we're going to see is more of the same. We're going to see a lot of buzz around technology, commercializing the internet, related issues, globalization of IT, explosive use of data networks. But, what I might change is the question here in terms of what we can expect. What can Canadian businesses no longer afford to ignore? What technology trends are impacting now in 2013? This is the question that we're asking ourselves in the industries, because there's always tons of evolution taking place, but what is it that's impacting now? And we really see in the industry three major forces coming together now that Canadian businesses need to be aware of, and these specifically are collaboration, virtualization, and mobility. And I can describe what those mean exactly.
Yeah, talk about the collaboration theme. What does that mean for a small business?
Yeah, so the collaboration theme, in a nutshell, the simplest definition of collaboration is really, it's about connecting people, wherever they are, to be more productive, to be more creative. People become more accessible, and you say a small business. Look, technology, it's used to reduce human latency, to get more out of people when it's actually working. So when we think of things like video and voice messaging and this conversation over an IP phone for me and electronic whiteboarding, you start to get the picture of people being able to connect, to become more creative, more productive. And collaboration it's really used when people become geographically distant, and allows employees, small, medium, large-sized businesses, public sector, to behave as if they're side by side. So IDC, for example, the research firm predicts that 72% of our Canadian workforce is going to be mobile by the year 2015. So, it's all about productivity driving competitiveness, and, how Canadian businesses take advantage of that. It really can't be ignored. They have to have a plan, and they have to start executing that next year.
Well, mobility, everybody's mobility now. You hear the stats about people checking websites for the first time. The chances are they're going to check it on their mobile device before they check it on a. What about the virtualization theme?
Well, yeah, we can get back to mobility as well. I've got a good anecdote over the Christmas break I can share, but hockey arena. But the virtualization theme is simply, what is it? Again, it's the evolution of technology away from being an expensive investment in dedicated infrastructure like servers and software licenses and network, simply towards making technology available as a utility. We often think of the idea, it's called cloud computing in the industry, and no greater term has been hyped up than that, and it's often created confusion. But that companies can reach into this nefarious cloud to access whatever they need, much like they do today as consumers when they plug in a device for power, is really the idea. And this, why they should care, it gives them cheaper access to the technology, whether it's the server or the software or the network, and these technologies that they're accessing are just as reliable, becoming just as secure. They're just as flexible, or arguably more flexible, and they're accessing them as a service now. So the impact of virtualization on technology is that it's making it available as a utility, as a service. That changes the cost of IT. That changes the competitive playing field for business, which changes the game.
So does that really effectively reduce your capital cost, if you will, of not having to buy the bricks and mortar of computing and as you said, I think you called it more, because that cloud computing people do get a little confused about. I think so it's not taking the bricks and mortar, it's taking the services and the virtual reaching into the cloud and saying I've got access to all the software I want, but you don't have to have the hardware. Is that
exactly? So the analogy we use in the industry, and there's a book written about this, The Big Shift. Think about electricity accessible, way back when on a paddle wheel on a river where you had to invest in the infrastructure to generate that electricity. Well, today electricity is available on a grid as a service. It changes the capital investment in the hardware required to generate power on a paddle wheel to accessing it on a grid as a service, and it becomes an operating expense of the business. It becomes much more predictable, much more manageable.
You are listening to Business, powered by Allstream. We're in conversation with Mike LaPalme. He is the Director of Solutions Partner Marketing for Allstream.
That mobility thing, I want to hear that story about the arena.
Yeah, you want to hear that story now. So when you talk about, the impact of mobility, there's another trend, and it's impacting business, and it's called consumerization of business. And this really, you look at mobility, you look at people walking around with their wireless devices, whatever they may be. In this particular story, it's an iPad in a hockey arena, and people are accessing technology from all kinds of places that they never used to. And I coach, and in an arena, it's interesting to see a couple of things going on. One, people are accessing the scores of the tournaments. They're not going to those charts on the walls anymore. They're actually sitting there on their iPads over Wi-Fi and getting the scores. And, Jesus, they're not up in real time. Hockey parents get awfully antsy awfully quickly. And I'll throw another one at you.
Basketball parents are the same.
Interesting for me as a coach of a girls' team to see girls in the room who are asking each other for tape, if they can borrow a roll of tape, and they're doing that over their BlackBerry devices and their iPhones. They're not actually talking to one another in my change room. They're actually texting. So you're seeing an explosion in mobile devices, mass adopted in the consumer market, but obviously impacting in the workplace. And what we're seeing is the impact that's having is just incredible. People are productive and creative at all kinds of times and in all kinds of ways, and in many places where they just weren't before. Road warriors, remote employees, etc. And we have technologies now, the ability to keep up with that, to make it secure and to allow business to take full advantage of that massive explosion in the adoption of mobile devices now, and to make that become impactful within the context of business.
Well, thanks very much. These three themes I think are really important, and I think today, for the first time, at least for me, I think it's become a little more clear what they actually mean and how it can affect. Because I run a small business just like Greg does, so I think that's been very useful. But how can we learn more? Or our listeners where can they go to learn a bit more about this, so they can sort of drill down and figure out how they can take advantage of what you're offering at Allstream?
Yeah, so lots of information out there on these themes. Anybody who's plugged in is obviously gonna go ahead and do a search on any of these topics. But Allstream is obviously doing its part. We're gonna be doing a lot here. Obviously, the information that I've talked about is on our allstream.com website first and foremost. But we're gonna be hosting a live webinar that'll be on Tuesday, January 22nd, and we're going to have a series of folks from within industry and from within our company that are going to be speaking to the trends and how they come together and form what we call this year a perfect storm for IT, and that is really, these aren't technologies that are interesting. These are technologies that are impacting, and why should Canadian businesses care? Well, we're going to have a group of 5 folks on that webinar on January 22nd.
All right, so just go to allstream.com to get involved. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. No, to get in on the webinar, allstream.com, right?
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant a calm before the storm. Yes, that's
all
right.
Mike, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, Greg. Ian, it was a pleasure.
That was great.
All right, this is Mike LaPalme, Director of Solutions Partner Marketing for Allstream. You are listening to Business to Business, powered by Allstream on 570 News. And we're with Ian and Greg once again on Business to Business, powered by Allstream. And gentlemen, we've talked. This is an annual event that you're both of your chambers are involved with. It's called LeaderCast. Yeah. This is very exciting. If there are any business owners listening right now, very exciting.
We were very pleased last year as a Cambridge the chamber the year before had started this event, and we came on board last year and had a fantastic event. I think we had 250 people attend, and really what it is, and I'll let Greg go into the details of it, but it's a day-long session, like 8 to 4. And there's lots of world-class speakers, and really an opportunity for business owners, whether you're small, medium, or large-sized business, to bring your staff. And it's part inspiration, part personal development, part business education, and it's a great, very well put together. And it's a satellite simulcast out of Atlanta, I think, but Greg can tell us about who some of the speakers are.
But it's like the Cadillac of networking events.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If I can put it that way.
It's fantastic. We expect. I mean, we had 250 last year. I wouldn't be surprised if we have 350 or 400 people in a room this year, which is fantastic.
Well, I think what's great too is now it's an accredited program for professional development credits for lawyers and HR professionals, and accountants. We're working on the accountants program as well. But some of the speakers, like these are, like Ian said, truly world-class speakers. Jack Welch, the CEO of General Electric, Andy Stanley, known by a lot of people as motivational speaker. Mike Krajewski, the head coach for
or Mike Krzyzewski,
sorry, the coach of Duke University's basketball team. John Maxwell, David Allen, getting things done, and a productivity expert, and Condoleezza Rice.
That'll be fascinating.
She doesn't do a whole lot of that kind of stuff, and I think it'll be really good because
hear some great
stories.
Hear leadership and how she's got to the position she has. So I mean, it's a fantastic lineup. It's a great day, very worth the money, and I think we're about to start selling tickets in the next number of weeks. It's May 10th, I think. May 10th, right. And it'll be at Bingaman.
We can come back and talk more about that.
Yeah. We will. And
we're going to we'll take a break and come back and talk a little bit more. Okay.
Sure.
You're listening to Business on 570 News, powered by Allstream. This segment of Business to Business is brought to you by Save on Energy, offered by your local electric utilities.
Business to Business, powered by Allstream, a presentation of 570 News. Watch the live video webcast at 570news.com. We'll return with more Business to Business. It's not just what you know, it's who you know. Connecting community through business. This is Business to Business on 570 News, powered by Allstream. All local, all relevant, allstream.com. Here's your host, Glenn Pelletier.
This has become a tradition now. McLean gets on my butt to do the Mick Jagger intro for the webcast viewers, where I'm supposed to come back from commercial and do this kind of...
Wait a minute! No, I want to do it. There it is.
And yes, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I'm not feeling 100%. I don't want to do the Jagger thing. All right?
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
He does. Still looks a little rough.
Listen to you, riding... No, your daughters like when I do the job.
Abby was asking this morning, is Glenn going to do that thing again? And I said, yeah, I'll make sure he does that thing again.
Okay. Well, there's one big difference between myself and Mick, and it's the dollars that...
yeah, that's right.
Our portfolios are slightly different. Speaking of dollars, this is more than a water cooler topic. This is a hot button topic, and it was in the news recently, and that is the great casino debate.
Yeah, well, actually, yesterday on the front page of the Record, a full spread on the whole question of OLG's new modernization programs, what they call it, and the possibility of there being a casino in this zone, of which Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, and the townships are. So it's been starting to produce some debate. Our members at the Chamber, or the Greater KW Chamber, have been talking about it at our membership level, at some of our committees, of saying, there's varying opinions, just like there was on LRT, and as an example, a very contentious issue, and there's lots of different sides to it. But I think one of the things that our members have said is the public is owed a good discussion on something like this, because the potential.
Do you think we'll ever get it at the political level?
Well, I think what we're
good,
doing,
honest, open discussion.
Well, I think
or is it something that they're going to try and dodge?
Well, I mean, to be fair, it hasn't bubbled up on their priority list. But what we have done is said our business community are at least starting to ask some questions and saying, what are they saying in yes and no to? And I don't have all the facts on the table. And I think what we expect of business and of our elected officials is to get the facts on the table and then take a position and say yes or no based on the facts that you have. So we've actually got our chamber is hosting Rod Phillips, who's the president of the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation, on February 7th. We've got a list of questions that our members have put together, but we hope that starts the debate. And we'll be asking Kitchener and Waterloo councils to, at least have the discussion in council and seek some public input on it before making a decision. Because this is and I was quoted in the paper, and I agree with this. Whether you agree with it or not, this is a once in a generation opportunity. Because once they pick the spot, it won't be an issue that will come up for quite some period of time. Is
it something that your chambers would adopt a firm position on, one way or the other, a public position?
I think that we always start from saying getting input, getting facts, and I was saying off air, the LRT issue, we took a long time to come to the position, but we did ultimately take a position once we got the facts on the table, and we were supportive of increased transit. And I think in this circumstance, what we would do, as we always do, is seek inputs from not only our members but the public, and then it'll be up to the elected officials, primarily at the local level, the local municipalities, to decide whether they want to at least have the conversation to move forward. So I think the public is owed that, because what we're talking about here in an era of declining revenues and increasing demands by people for public services, that this is an opportunity, and it's not without its downsides. But to be fair, there's the possibility of some significant millions of dollars in annual revenues that can support either infrastructure or services. And I think that's worthy of at least having a debate. And if the answer is, geez, the downside is so much that it's not worth those dollars, that's an answer, and that's fair. Absolutely. And I think that's we are not saying that what the answer is one way or the other, but the debate should happen.
It's about having a community dialogue about it, and I think rather than have a handful of people decide yes or no, I think it's critically important that the community have a look at it too. And that's not to say that the community have a look at it and to take a view of supporting it. It's not about that. It's about finding out more about what it would look like here in the region of Waterloo, and what we could expect from it, and then making that more educated decision rather than that emotional, moral decision.
This is what we're dancing around, and this is why it's so contentious. We all know what a huge revenue generator they are, what a huge employer they are, but it comes at the cost of what, for lack of a better term, collateral damage.
Exactly.
And it's a debate that it's not going to go away. There are two realities here.
Yeah.
So at what point do you draw the line?
You're absolutely right, but that's precisely where we need to have the discussion and say there are two sides to this story, and but wishing that gambling didn't take place, or that there wasn't going to be a casino somewhere within spitting distance of the region of Waterloo, is not an answer either. There's going to be one somewhere around here. So the question is, where's it going to be? How does it impact us? Because it's probably going to impact this region anyways.
And how do we maximize the benefits out of it?
Absolutely. And can this produce a convention center? Can it produce other infrastructure that can produce economic development? And even if it can, what are the downsides associated to it? And how do you balance those things? I think that's precisely the debate that needs to happen. And I haven't heard that. No. I haven't heard that right now. And I guess and our members are asking, when they've asked me, are saying, what does it all mean? And I said, I don't have all the information, and so it's very hard to come up with a position.
Gentlemen, about a minute and a half to go. What's going on with your
this week
chambers?
we're very pleased. We've got the new dean of the business School of Business and Economics from Wilfrid Laurier, Michael Kelly, who's new to us from Ottawa. So really interested in his vision for Wilfrid Laurier and their new business school, Global Innovation Center. And then at the end of January, this is going to be great. We've got both the university presidents and the community college, John Tibbetts and Ferden and Max Blau, talking about the importance of post-secondary institutions.
And Greg?
And we have our Salute to Women's in Business with Andrea Stairs, the CEO. They call her a country manager, but CEO of eBay Canada, coming up in the next week and a half. And we also have Paul Beeston coming on February the 12th. So
try and get some free tickets for us. Day tickets. We want day tickets.
We actually secured Paul before the announcements came forward, but now, with Vegas saying that the Jays are the
odds-on favorite.
There's a sharp cookie.
It should be very, very cool. I think it's going to be neat, and I know they're looking forward to presenting because this area is pretty important to selling tickets. And
okay, just one thing. When you have him, check whether he wears socks. When he worked for Labatt's and I worked for Lex, never wore socks. Middle of the winter, never wore socks.
He's notorious for that. Thanks to Liz Russell and Catherine Drake for their great efforts today producing the show.
Thank you.
The news is next at 1 o'clock. Then it's the pregame, the NHL show, and then the pregame show at 1:30. Rangers hockey at 2. This is 570 News.